Hello everyone, it's Lisa back again. This is part 2 of week 9 lecture, and this time I'm going to talk just briefly about creating backgrounds for your websites. Okay. Now I have open here in Photoshop, I have everybody's web pages that everyone's working on in the class. So I'm going to go ahead and show them in a full view here. And as you can kind of see, we have several people who are utilizing backgrounds or interesting backgrounds. Over here we've got this Bruce Lee site in development here, and this particular student is using several backgrounds on each one of their sections of the website, and it's looking pretty good. Over here we've got a web page design for Paul McCartney, and it looks like this individual also has some backgrounds going on. And we also had a few mentions about backgrounds in the lynda.com tutorials. So I thought I would just talk quickly about backgrounds because I believe up here this individual, she comes to my lab a lot. She also is going to put backgrounds into her web pages. They're just not indicated right now in the files that I have in this demonstration. So, but this individual doesn't have any backgrounds. They may think about wanting them eventually or maybe not. But I want to talk to you about how to go about creating your backgrounds. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let go. All right, so maybe you remember this image here, whoops, from your tutorials in lynda.com. And this is one of the backgrounds that you used in the I believe it was Create Your First Website tutorial. And I want to point out a couple of things about these backgrounds because there were about 6 of them that you ended up playing around with through going when going through that tutorial. And I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, I want to show you what happens when you use backgrounds in a web page. All right, so let's go back here to Dreamweaver, and I have just basically a blank HTML document here, okay? And I have nothing in it over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw a couple things in as backgrounds, and I want you to see what happens when you put images in as backgrounds. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the page properties, and using the basic feature here called background image, I'm going to go ahead and grab an image, just a random one. Like I'm going to just play around with this image right here. So let's pretend that this was some kind of texture, and it kind of is. It's very textural. And I want to use this as a background. Okay, so when I select it, I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and I'm going to apply it. All right, now I want you to notice what's happening back here. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and I'm going to get this out of the way here. Let's close that. Okay, put that over here. All right, so I want you to notice what's happened here. When you select an image that is relatively small, like in this case, this is just a header-sized image, what HTML does is it repeats the background in both the X and Y directions. So as you can kind of see, this background ends right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. And right here. And you can see that it repeats that background again, 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 and again, over and over until it makes a complete texture across the screen. Okay, so that anytime you put anything in as a background, it will repeat in both the X and Y direction. Now, you can control the repeating in CSS, but for right now, for purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to look at this one example, okay? So let's go ahead and split this, and I'm going to change this background because if you go back and look, I'm going to browse for a minute at the background that I selected here. This is the one I selected. Notice that it is in dimensions 815 by 223. So it doesn't fit the entire size of the web page, so it's going to repeat. Okay, now let's go ahead and select that background that we had in Photoshop just a moment ago. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say open to that, and I'm going to apply that. Okay, and then we're going to put this into design mode. Now notice that it also is repeating, but it's repeating quite further over than the previous example. Okay, now this is the reason why when you have backgrounds in your web page designs, you have to set them up separately. Okay, and they have to be separate images, such as this. This is just a background image. If you go back into Photoshop, here it is here. Now let's take a look at what size this background image is. So let's go up to image size and look here. Now this background image is 1366 by 1000 in pixel size. Okay, so this is kind of like the recommended size that you should make all backgrounds, so that you can guarantee that when you do use them in your HTML page. So let's go back here to the HTML page, and let's actually look at this HTML page in a web browser. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. Okay. All right, so back here, hold on, let me hide this because it might be a little bit distracting. Okay, so here's my HTML page right here. And you could see that if I pull it way out, you'll see that that background is beginning to repeat, but most of the time, most people are not going to actually have their web browsers open that far. More than likely, they're probably going to have them open about this width, and they're never going to see that repeat. So that's why when you create your backgrounds, you have to make them large so that they only show once in the web browser window. Okay, if you scroll, if I had some scrolling, right now no scroll bar is here because I haven't activated it with text. And when you have lots of text, that activates a scroll bar here. Okay, all right. So basically, let's go back to Photoshop. So what you're going to have to do if you have backgrounds in your web pages is you're going to actually have to make a separate file and place those backgrounds in there. Now what you should do is when you create that separate file, let's look at this here. What is this, 1366 by 1000? So you're going to, so over here I just wrote that down. You're going to create a new file in Photoshop, and you're going to create the size of that file. Oops. Why did it do that? I don't know. 1366 tab. Oh. I'm not sure why it's in. Oh, it's in inches. Sorry. Okay. That explains it. Okay. By 1000. Okay, and then this should be 72 DPI. Okay, so if you're creating backgrounds for the web, you should set up your files, and they should be separate files, not part of the homepage file or the inside file that we've been working on, a separate file, and you should set up the size of that background file at 1366 by 1000. Okay, and then you'll get this. This is just a blank page, and then you'll load in that background into this document. Okay, so let me get out of this. So that'll look like this. Okay, and then you'll just go up to here and you'll just save out that entire page as a JPEG. All right, so you'll just say JPEG 60 for that entire page, and you'll just save this entire background out at 13 by 66 by 1000. Okay, and then that's what you'll use in your HTML documents when you're over here in Dreamweaver. Okay, all right, so that's how to do backgrounds. It's important that you set them up at the right size in Photoshop so that when you get into Dreamweaver, they act the way you expect them to act. And after looking at several of the students' web pages here, if I go ahead and put myself in F10, you'll see we've got several people considering backgrounds in their design. So you're going to have to think about how to save those backgrounds out so that they function properly for you once you start coding your page. Okay, that ends the video on backgrounds.